This is actually the second time that I come to this exhibit since it became available for us to visit. And I have gone through the entire exhibit multiple times, reading every piece of history that is right in front of our eyes. And it did not fail to happen again this time, that every time that I get to that boat, I imagine the night that my mother left with 3 small children. I was 15, my sister was 13, and my brother was 11 years old. I remember that stormy night when she put us all around her, and we saw the storm, the lightning, and she would pray. She was praying that we would be able to make it to freedom and that we would be able to see my father again. And it just brings a lot of memories for me. And then when I read the oars and what people that came in a boat, and the boat, it is something that is so fragile that you cannot imagine that people crossing the ocean could ever survive in such a raft, and to see how they build it, to look at the details of the raft, it's just something that has been very chilling. I know the first time I had to, one of the people that I came with, she embraced me, and I had to weep. I was crying for so long, and even the second time has been very difficult to see it, and to read the words of Castro. Those who don't have his revolutionary spirit, we don't want them, we don't need them. Neither do I. I definitely do not need communism in my life. I don't need Castro in my life. And I am so glad that I live in a free country. And I want to thank the organizers of the exhibit to bring this history to Tampa. It is so important to understand and to feel and to witness what we have gone through. So thank you.
The exhibit is very well presented. It tells a story from the beginning, 500 years of history of Cuba, which is something to think about, of all the different phases Cuba went through, different periods. There's time of the Spaniards, there's time we were under the English, the Americans. The English took care of us for a while, and then back to the Cubans with our first president in 1902, and then Cuba became a republic until the date of 31st of December of 1958, when Cuba was taken over by the revolutionaries that turned out to be a socialist government, mainly communist. But in the beginning, we would have never known the real truth. It came out a year and a half later, and Cuba has been under the rule of the socialist and communist government ever since.
Esta es la segunda vez desde que abrió la exhibición que yo vengo a verla, porque la primera vez me impactó tanto. Yo había venido con una amiga, con 2 amigas, y terminé que no podía ni hablar, porque la señora me abrazó y nunca se imaginaron, porque ellas han vivido mi historia a través de mis libros, y nunca se imaginaron el impacto que tendría la exhibición, especialmente cuando llegamos a ese bote.
La balsa,
y vi la manera en que se había construido, que prácticamente con nada, y me llevó a esa noche que salimos de Cuba con mi madre cuando yo tenía 15 años y mi hermana 13 y mi hermano 11 años, y el miedo y el terror en los ojos de mi madre cuando nosotros salimos en esa noche tempestuosa, y que nos decía aguántense, y sin saber si llegaríamos con vida, y viendo los relámpagos y viendo la tormenta, fue una cosa que regresó enseguida, y fue muy impactante para mí, no solamente la primera vez, sino también esta segunda vez. Definitivamente que se aprende mucho, pero a la misma vez ver la historia, ¿no? Las diferentes partes de la historia cubana, lo que es para mí muy importante, ¿no? El éxodo del Mariel, que fue lo que trajo 125,000 cubanos a tierras de libertad, los diferentes éxodos que han habido a través de la historia, documentos de viaje de diferentes personas que han venido, hasta los zapatos de niños, los remos con las palabras grabadas para siempre, para la historia de esas personas que estuvieron en esa balsa. Para mí, clamando a Dios, libertad, los nombres que quedaron para siempre en esos remos, es algo inolvidable y definitivamente se los recomiendo de que vengan a verla porque es algo muy impactante. Bueno, el mural ese a la entrada, cuando uno entra, y es un mural excepcional, es algo, a mí, yo me detuve y lo miré por varias veces, he tomado fotos, he tomado videos, te lleva a Cuba, ¿no? Y claro, los mapas, los diferentes documentos, es algo que no importa de dónde venga la persona, ya sea que venga de Cuba, ya sea que venga de otro país, que también atrae a esas familias porque todos pasamos por lo mismo, todos dejamos todo atrás para venir a tierras de libertad, y yo creo que no importa de dónde sea la persona, que una exhibición como esta yo creo que va a ser de mucho uso y muy valiosa para ellos también y para sus hijos.
I tried to put myself in the shoes of my mother and my grandmother in that summer of '61, knowing that they were leaving their homeland and never to come back. And with the hope of the future of their family, literally in their lap, in me, and to strike out to a new place, new culture, new language, into the complete unknown. And I put myself in her shoes as soon as I saw those two chairs from the airport in Havana. And I can just picture my mother and my grandmother with me on their lap, knowing that they were leaving and waiting for the phone calls from the embassy in Mexico City, because the Cuban authorities were giving my mother and grandmother some, as they gave almost everyone who left, a real hard time, asking for a little bit more and a little bit more. And to be getting calls from the embassy. My father, luckily, he was already in Mexico City, had some connections, and they were making calls saying, you must let that woman on that plane with her mother and her child. With my sister, my mother was already burying my sister. Cuba was such a fascinating, beautiful, multicultural haven. It was a beautiful place. Mm-hmm. Well, no, the two things, I will go back to that seat and to that boat. For all the suffering that went on in that boat, those people knew that they were going to something far better, something where they were going to a place in a land where people can strive as far and as hard as they wish, given all the talents that God gives them, to strive and to stride, which was the spirit that the Cuban people had long before the revolution. And the Cubans knew that spirit could be sparked again in a beautiful country like the United States. And I view Tampa as my Ellis Island, because we went from Cuba to Mexico to Panama, then to Puerto Rico. We lived in many different places, and we finally ended up in Tampa. I learned how to speak English at Our Lady of Perpetual Help, Tampa's my Ellis Island. que pueden ver otro ser humano que es también hispano, que la historia de todos nosotros son de verdad casi lo mismo.
Perfect. I came to the United States when I was just turned 4 years old. I was very excited to see this exhibit, Cuban Pathways, because it puts me in touch with my history. Having recently traveled to Cuba and to China, I really became more aware of the varied history of my native country. The fact that it's a melting pot between Africans, between Chinese and Spaniards, and the very rich history that it has. And I think that this exhibit really coalesces those histories that you don't often hear much about. And it has really enriched the experience of discovering who I am and where I come from. And I greatly encourage any person who has any interest in Cuba or who was born in Cuba to come visit this exhibit.
It was very touching. My uncle, her brother, came on a boat very similar to this, but very smaller. So it touches you personally, you know? Because I remember some things, but, you know, you grow up hearing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really makes a little bit of a circle. Connects a circle.
The exhibit was so touching that I cried. You know, going through it with my mom and my brother, and my mom, who was 35 when she came here with 2 young children, 4 and 2. So the exhibit really hit home. And you know, her brother came on a boat, on a boat smaller than the one that's displayed. So, yeah, it was marvelous, and we plan to come back because there's so much to see. We took the tour, we went on our own too. There was so much to see that we're going to come back and take some more time and see more things. Yeah, it's a beautiful exhibit.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
500 years of history, more than 120 artifacts, and the story of 3 families, all of it packed into one amazing exhibit about Cuba. It's Cuban Pathways. Do you have a Cuban Pathway story? Share it with us. Use the hashtag #MyCubanPathway.
Go.
500 years of history, more than 120 artifacts, and the story of 3 families, all of it jam-packed into one amazing exhibition about Cuba, Cuban Pathways. Do you have your own Cuban Pathway story? Share it with us. Use the hashtag #MyCubanPathway. Good? You want Okay.
Okay, dale.
500 years of history, more than 120 artifacts, all of it jam-packed into one amazing exhibition, Cuban Pathways. Do you have your own Cuban Pathway story? Share it with us. Use the hashtag #MyCubanPathway. Yeah, it makes
I like that one better.
Years of Cuban history, more than 120 artifacts, the story, the very personal story of 3 families, all of it jam-packed into one amazing exhibition, Cuban Pathways, now at the Tampa Bay History Center. Get your tickets. Visit or 500 years of history, more than 120 artifacts, and the very personal story of 3 Cuban families. All of it jam-packed into one amazing exhibition, Cuban Pathways, here now at the Tampa Bay History Center. Visit our website anytime to get your tickets. "500 years of history, more than 120 artifacts, and the very personal story of 3 Cuban families. All of it packed into one amazing exhibition here at the Tampa Bay History Center. It's Cuban Pathways. Visit our website and get your tickets now." "500 años de historia de Cuba están representados en esta exposición ahora en el Tampa Bay History Center. La exposición se llama Cuban Pathways, una experiencia inolvidable. Visítenos en la página web para sus tickets. "500 años de historia de Cuba están representados en esta exposición inolvidable aquí en el Tampa Bay History Center. La exposición se llama Cuban Pathways. No se la pierda. Para sus boletos, visite nuestra página web. "500 años de historia cubana representados en esta exposición inolvidable en el Tampa Bay History Center. Se llama Cuban Pathways. No se pierda esta experiencia inolvidable. Visite nuestra página web para sus boletos.